Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 7th Puro.earth Carbon Removal Ecosystem Meeting. I am Elba Horta. I'm Head of Communications at Puro.earth, and we're very excited to have this meeting as part of Climate Week New York City, the biggest climate event on the planet. And today we have a great program for you. To meet climate goals, we must accelerate the development of carbon dioxide removal. Puro.earth is the world's first carbon removal standard, registry, and B2B marketplace. And we help corporations neutralize carbon emissions and help them unlock finance to enable the scale-up of carbon removal. In this meeting, you will learn about the state of the carbon removal industry, about the different tools we offer to secure, fund, and de-risk early-stage carbon removal. And you will hear from our partners who together with us are pushing forward the growth of the carbon removal industry to contribute to a net zero world. This is today's agenda. First, we're going to have Antti Vihavainen, CEO and co-founder of Puro.earth, who is going to talk to us about Puro.earth and about the ecosystem, what has been achieved and what's next. Then we will have Arnaud Defrance, our VP of Funding Solutions, who will talk about Pre-CORCs. And I should pause here. A CORC is a CO2 removal certificate, our type of carbon removal credit. He will talk about Pre-CORCs as digital assets to trace and secure investments in early-stage carbon removal projects. Then we will have Natalia Dorfman, CEO and co-founder of Kita, the world's first carbon insurer. She will talk to us about how to de-risk non-delivery of carbon removal and the role of the insurance industry in fighting climate change. Then we will have Ned Dwyer, CEO of American Biocarbon. American Biocarbon is one of the largest industrial biochar producers in the US, and they are transforming sugarcane bagasse to remove carbon from the atmosphere, and Ned is going to talk to us about that. Then we will have Mikael Larsen, CEO of Climate Impact X, a gateway to the Asian carbon markets and one of our partners. Thank you so much. We will also have a Q&A. So in your dashboard, you will see that there is a Q&A button. Throughout the meeting, we will have questions there. So we will not answer questions throughout the meeting, but only at the end. And at the end, we will have a Q&A moderated by our Director of Business Development, Joseph Kochansky. So without further ado, Antti Vihavainen, our CEO.
Thank you very much, Elba, and greetings to everybody from this very warm city of New York, where the Climate Week has kickstarted, and therefore the whole city seems to be in a bit of a traffic jam. Many important people flying around to meet with other important people over here. Anyway, that's the way it has to be in order to be able to progress things on the climate agenda. And I'm really also happy to have heard today from Elba that there are 150 people who have joined this session through the New York Climate Week registration system that are not within our existing social media and other sort of newsletter recipients. So really good to have you here as well. Happy to sort of also help you in on what we do. So let's get started with the basics. We are here talking about the climate and the need for climate sort of mitigation on the carbon removal side. And one statement that is easy to make is that when it comes to climate change, all that matters is CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. And if we look at the sort of why can we say that, here's a timeline of the past 800,000 years, where the correlation between the CO2 concentration and the atmospheric temperature, average temperatures can be easily seen. Please note that this graph is sort of ending at 280 parts per million, and now this is the graph, more sort of a detailed graph that has been officially measured since the 60s in Hawaii. We can see that the concentration keeps on increasing, and of course in geological scale this is dramatically fast. In fact, if we look at the year when I was born in 1972, since then the absolute amount of carbon in the atmosphere has grown by 30%. That's a lot. And as you can see over here, there's not much of a dent that was done by the global lockdown in 2020, even though many people said that it would be significant. Now, looking at the the flow of carbon in the world, we've got carbon that is stored outside of circulation, and then we've got carbon that is in the biosphere in circulation. And human activity, of course, results in this carbon that is in fossil form, stored out of circulation, to be extracted and put into the atmosphere. And then we've got the other cycle that is sort of sequestering it away from the atmosphere, mainly through oceans absorbing much of it. So there's not a balance, there's an imbalance of quite a big one, 50 gigatons to 20 gigatons. And so therefore, the first and foremost priority for the humankind is to minimize the emissions and then continue to maximize the removals. Of course, there's another cycle which is inside the biosphere, and there we can see that whatever is captured by the plants typically goes back into the atmosphere pretty soon. So our intention is, of course, to create an incentive to also store some of that carbon in the permanent storages. And now, talking about incentives, I think it's good to sort of come to the point, or the business model. So our, let's say, the most visible part of Puro is a marketplace. And when we started back in 2018, that was the intention. But in a way, we realized that we can't have a marketplace because none of the existing standards back then were certifying engineered or even hybrid carbon removals. So we in fact had to create a registry of our own where we would track the sales of these certificates. But in order to have something to track, we would have to have an issuing body, which was then established as well. Then we had to have auditors that tell the issuing body what to issue, but they can't act unless they have methodologies and general rules. And of course, the general methodologies require an advisory board that will instruct what is okay and what not. And below all of that, there's the business operations that make things happen. So it's good to know that even though the marketplace was the driving force initially, it is now just the tip of the iceberg, and also, of course, the bilateral agreements that happen between the buyer and the seller can take place in our marketplace or in some other marketplace. So in order to establish a sort of a well-functioning business operation and also a standard that is independent from the business, we've have one part that is similar to other or companies. The board of directors instructs the management team, then implementing the business operations. That's very straightforward. But the board of directors in our case has mandated the independent advisory board to establish the Puro standard and crediting rules. So there's an oversight process. And of course, that involves working groups where the researchers and the project developers are working together to establish the methodologies that then together form the standard. And those standards and methodologies and crediting rules are then implemented by the business operations. And we are extremely proud, of course, to have a very distinguished advisory board, which is led by Professor Miles Allen from University of Oxford, the author of Oxford Net Zero Initiative, and has participated in the work of IPCC and Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets and SBTI. So as you can see, many other distinguished people that we are very happy that represent the innovation, a lot of the practical research and policy knowledge in the world. Okay, jumping quickly to the our methodologies that we've sort of established so far, starting with biochar. So production of biochar stabilizes CO2 that is in the biomass, and when that is used as soil amendment, it will stay there for a very long time, and thus locking the CO2 away from circulation. Carbonate building elements is a way of mineralizing CO2 into carbonates, and that is, of course, very stable, stays there for basically forever. Bio-based construction materials, also a bit more shorter term solution, only 50 years can be promised as the permanence there, but can be useful in many instances. Geologically removed carbon at the other end of the spectrum is basically representing millions of years of carbon removal permanence, which basically means that when the atmospheric or biogenic CO2 is injected to the same wells where natural gas, for example, has stayed for millions of years, it's basically similar kind of storage. And one very brilliant methodology is woody biomass burial, which is rapidly growing coppicing plants that are chopped and put into an anoxic environment and therefore are prevented from decomposing. Plenty of new methods are being worked on. We are happy to say that hopefully quite soon we will have the world's first enhanced weathering methodology, and then we continue to work with several other projects. We are, there's a global portfolio with high growth. These icons are not representing all the projects. It's just indicative that there are projects popping up in most of the places around the world. Still more to come, of course. So I asked from our own team, what are the firsts that Puro has accomplished so far? And here are some of the answers. Well, firstly, we set up the operation in less than 3 months. We believe that it is some sort of an world record still, and we are very proud that it resulted in a continuous business operation after the experiment phase. We are also probably the first ones, as far as we understand, to issue 200,000 tons worth of sort of high permanence, high quality carbon removal credits. We were the first ones to establish the biochar methodology. Now we are on the second generation there. We've got the carbonated building materials that are net negative, and biomass burial is also another innovative methodology. Furthermore, we believe that we are the first standard where the business model is fully aligned with the supplier. So in short, it means that we are not starting to earn any money before the supplier of negative emissions starts to earn money. This is done to lower the threshold to enter the ecosystem, and also, of course, we strive to be the most cost-effective ecosystem in the carbon markets. And yeah, auditing, by the way, is paid by us. So, and this is done for many reasons. We have a fairly good understanding of what the auditing should cost and where to get it. And that also reduces the, let's say, the corruption risk if the supplier gets to choose who is auditing them, as it is in other standards. And then we believe that we are the first standard that has started to sort of work on filling in the funding gaps. And of course, my colleague Arnaud will be discussing this shortly. So the title of this presentation was who is it that, or what is it that we have achieved and what's next? So let's get to that next part here. Here's a road that twists and turns and goes into the horizon. Firstly, I'm happy to say that there's going to be a really high quality, innovative new methodologies that are going to be deployed within the next few months and years. We believe that we are the pioneer. We intend to remain as the pioneer on this front. There are also some really exciting projects that are being established within these new methodologies. Some of them are just today published on our website. If you go to Puro's website, you'll see that there's, for example, a bioenergy with CCS in Norway, where it's basically taking biogas facility that is now venting CO2 into the atmosphere, capturing that CO2 and injecting it into a cavity. So this is really interesting, low-hanging fruit in a way, and it has a tremendous scaling potential as well. So another good example of something that is coming up in the near future. So portfolio products or composite products or bundles that are sort of pre-made for each easier purchase that will evolve to contain 100% permanent removal at the net zero moment, be it in 2030, 40, or 2050, depending on the customer. So that's something that we are working on. Also with CIX that is today introducing themselves to this audience. Market makers, companies that are buying certificates or committing to purchase from very early stage companies and are then providing therefore liquidity into the market are sort of gearing up. All kinds of funds and so forth are being prepared. And of course, purchase facilities, we know that there are a few of those that have tremendous access to capital and they are able to deploy that in a very short period of time, just as long as supply is there. Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets and their core carbon principles are a very important way of shaping the market in the near future. We are observing and influencing that discussion as much as we can. And we are committed to being CCP compliant when the time comes. Yeah, marketplaces are being formed. Some of them are using blockchain technologies. Some of them are not, but different approaches are being worked on, and we of course want to partner with them. Meta registries, World Bank, IHS, and others are setting up meta registries, and eventually, of course, we need insurance that will allow us to make sure that the buyer gets what they want. And we've got Natalia here today talking about that topic in a short while. And eventually, we are probably going to go towards compliance markets. So, and that's a good thing. We are now basically, as a market, proving ourselves worthy of having some of these methodologies brought into the compliance market in the next 10 or 20 years. So that's a little bit further down the line. But anyway, so this is a overview of what has happened and what we believe are going to be the next relevant topics. However, now is time to continue the ecosystem meeting with my colleague Arnaud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antti. All right. I'll set up the screen sharing over here. So, hi everyone. My name is Arnaud Defrance. I joined Puro.earth 12 months ago. I joined this planet Earth 36 years ago today. And most of my working life I've spent funding renewable energy projects, so carbon reduction type of a project. But this last year has been for me a lot of time and energy to try to design products and services to help the growth of the carbon removal market. And during this presentation, I will refer as the suppliers and buyers. So our carbon removal certificates are called CORCs, and suppliers are the ones that remove CO2 and store it for the long time. They supply our marketplace with CORCs, and the buyers are the ones that purchase them. If we look at the state of the market today, so Antti mentioned about the importance of carbon removal. It seems to be that the state is not so great because most of the transactions that we see are actually happening on the offset, which is helping to slow down emission. But if we want to claim any net, zero kind of operations, we need to grow this durable carbon removal market quite a lot. So it's a supply limited market. Why is that? So if we zoom a little bit in, and if we zoom a little bit more, we see that there are some projects already available on our marketplace that are feeding us with CORCs. They have their operation going, but it's a small tip of the iceberg versus the tremendous potential that's ahead. There are many more projects that are not in operation, in development phase, and it takes time, of course, for those projects to be implemented and to answer the growing demand for quality carbon removal. And those projects in development, the majority of them face funding gaps. So that's why Puro took the decision to invest into a team that will help solve this growth dilemma. And if we zoom even more into one carbon removal project, I will not bore you with some finance jargon. I just want to give an overview of what the situation is and what challenge those carbon removal projects face, so that we can explain how we aim at solving those. Projects need to invest in fixed assets, so projects that will remove CO2. They also need some working capital to run the business, and they need to fund those operations, either with equity or debt. So the funding is usually traditionally from equity and debt, and they can help raise this by securing future cash flow here in green. Some of the projects have different revenues and not only generated by CORCs or carbon removal. Where Puro has been active has been to enable buyers to purchase CORCs from suppliers, either the one in inventories, so that have already been audited, or the future ones that will be ready as the operations will be taking place, with what we call advanced market commitments. You could refer to this as offtakes, CORC offtake agreement as well. It happens that those projects face funding gaps. As you can see here, there is this white, and sometimes it's way bigger than this. And why that? So try to summarize it quickly. The risk and return profile of the projects in carbon removal is quite different than what investors or lenders are used to, simply because we're operating in an innovative space. If you compare to renewable energy that had 20 years to mature, There's a lot of innovation that also means a lot of risk, technology risk, implementation risk, and also projects need to go down their experience curve. So the cost per unit in the beginning is higher, as then as they scale, they will of course become more profitable. This means that to have decent returns, you need patient capital. So longer horizon for investment or tenor for loans than capital providers are used to. Then those projects, as part of innovation, they need to walk before they run. So the size of the first deal is always smaller than what capital providers are used to, which is not always of interest then from economic point of view, unless of course they value learning as investigating on those projects. There is a difficulty to find sometimes the right mix of technical expertise and people who know how to scale their operations efficiently. And we sometimes have seen some expectations that could be unrealistic, if it could be from entrepreneurs not being ready to dilute and hope buyers to take most of the implementation risks, or price disagreements, etc. But what we are introducing today is a new digital asset. As the name that Elba described earlier is, they're pre-CORCs. So they are actually a tool to channel prepayments here. It's another way for projects to access funding. And you can, as a buyer, enable projects to take their operations off the ground. This is an answer from buyers that have shared with us their willingness to make even more climate impact than just buying the corks, but also enabling the projects and enabling the scale of the supply. So Puro will introduce from today this new digital asset. So to help suppliers access to prepayment as another source of funding, and buyers to secure and trace future corks. And we will, of course, with time, make this a streamlined process. So, of course, when you mentioned about prepayments, some immediately think about what happens if you prepay for corks and things don't happen as planned. So we are, as I said, operating in an innovative space. So we spend a lot of time thinking about non-delivery risk for those future corks that buyers will pay for in advance. The first of those risks is that there will be, from now on, project eligibility for pre-CORCs. They must pass commercial and technical assessments. Quite advanced one, but something that buyers can lean on to have at least a second opinion or a certain level of comfort that the projects make sense. Pre-CORCs will also be limited to 5 years ahead. We need to put a limit in time. There will be also a buffer at the issuance, so 20%. This will be a rule. There will be recommendations separately. It may be that we will recommend buyers to pay more attention to projects that are there for the first time, and as projects get maturity, they can perhaps make bigger commitments. The value of prepayments will also be capped by it should not exceed 150% of the book value of the supplier's equity. Equity has been historically, the best tool to cover those implementation risks and technology risks. So this is why we have made this link. And the cash to be paid to the suppliers will only happen when the project is fully funded. Pre-CORC buyers will get priority over the cork for the cork delivery to stimulate prepayments versus the advance commitment on the market. There will be also cork non-delivery risk insurance to be implemented early in 2023. So obviously, to be able to scale the market, it would be very useful to have an insurance for such event. And I'm sure it's not a coincidence that we have Natalia speaking straight after me. We've been working and looking at this. So we are now also introducing Puro financial advisory. So on top of adding this product as pre-cork to channel prepayments, also to help suppliers to raise other source of funding, which is equity and debt. So it will be optional, and of course, Puro.earth will help suppliers lift their financial impediments in a cost-effective manner, and buyers will be able to have more projects to choose from that are actually fully funded. All of this, of course, subject to proper regulatory work, but we're working on this. And this is now part of a larger program to support the growth of this carbon removal market, which we call Puro Accelerate. It's optional, so projects can still, as for projects in development phase, they can still list as a general listing on our platform. And what it means is that they raise the funding themselves. They just use Puro as a marketplace to raise advanced commitments. They use our registry on our standards. Now, the introduction of Puro Accelerate is to give the option to some suppliers to apply for these commercial and technical assessments. And if they do, the idea is that it will maximize chances for raising longer cork advanced commitments from their buyers with this additional level of confidence. The one that passed this commercial and technical assessment, they will be able to issue pre-corks. And what it means is that they will maximize long-term offtake agreements, but also access to prepayments via this streamlined way of purchasing that, the pre-corks as digital assets. The third option will be also to use Puro Advisory to help them raise missing funding parts from any angle of this, any level of the capital structure, equity, debt, or prepayments. Is there any additional cost to the usual service fee that we charge? For normal listing, no. For the commercial assessment, this will be also done for free, as well as the issuance of the pre-corks. Only the advisory services will be on a more selective basis with a la carte work and success fee. Usually we expect it to save from the expensive alternative. So this is the point, is really to lift impediments. Now, what does it mean for buyers? The general listing means that usually they have to conduct the due diligence themselves, which typically buyers do. But if there is a commercial and technical assessment, they receive additional assurance behind their own due diligence. If there are projects with pre-corks, they can also secure future corks with that tool at a discount. And knowing that the project will use our advisory services, we expect to be able to offer more funding projects. And all of these pre-corks with this little smiley over here are reflected with the fact that we really put a lot of efforts on the risk mitigations by rules and the insurance that we discussed. Yeah, so how do the projects will fill those white rectangles over here? There will be a possibility to do that on your own with equity, debt, or prepayments with a general listing. The funding gaps to fill with the Puro Accelerate, we hope that it would be easier for the projects to do so. And with the first option to only have the commercial technical assessments, raise more offtake agreements, and therefore beef up a little bit this equity and debt part. If there is possibility to issue pre-corks, then we will be able to channel prepayments directly with our sales team so that they will hopefully fill these funding gaps. And if there is this financial advisory, we will actively help projects on all levels of the balance sheet. Now, that means that it's a flexible, everything is optional. Suppliers can select the support they need, and the buyers can choose the level of assurance they want. From that, that means that buyers will benefit from higher reach for the projects to choose from. They will be, they can diversify the portfolio for the future carbon removal credits by geography, methodology, or level of advancement of the projects now. They will also have the possibility to secure higher volume for future corks and access more tools to enable the growth of the, they will themselves be able to enable the growth of the carbon removal market to reach their net zero targets with the pre-CORCs and different services of assurance. They will be able to lean on this more holistic project assessments, commercial and technical, not only linked to the methodology, but as an overall. They will benefit from non-delivery risk mitigation measures that we described, potential discounts on CORCs for long-term commitments or pre-CORCs. And they will also benefit from a delivery priority for the ones that decide to transact with pre-CORCs. Then they will have the flexibility to sell the pre-CORC surplus, as pre-CORCs will be tradable assets. Once the cash goes to the projects, the enablement impact is there. The credit risk of the buyer does not matter anymore. These assets will be tradable and therefore flexible. Now, this is all good, but we actually wanted to also showcase this process, as we had a first case already that went through this process. The project's name is Sonnenerde. A biochar project is based in Austria. And you can see now, if you go to our marketplace, you can choose to buy, as a buyer, you can buy CORCs from projects in operation, or look at the ones that are from the design phase projects. And if you look at the design phase projects, you will start to see now this mark there. That means that the project has actually been validated. And if you click into the projects, we actually invite you to also check their videos. They've made a quite good job of it there. And you can see all of the information about this process. So this process went through our technical and commercial assessment. So please check it out. This was the description overall of the services and the products that Puro want to offer to help this little blue dot, ridiculously small. It's growing fast, but it's not growing fast enough. We really hope that those tools and services will help grow this durable carbon removal market. Let's not wait. Let's act now, so that next time we speak, hopefully I'll have to show you something that looks more like that. Thank you so much. And now I'll leave the floor to Natalia from Kita.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Arnaud. Thank you, Antti. It was really great to hear about all the new initiatives and about the pre-CORC. Actually, tomorrow we will have a blog post about the pre-CORC. So stay tuned to our LinkedIn and Twitter, and subscribe to our newsletter in the Puro.earth website to hear those news. And yes, we'll now have Natalie Dorfman, CEO of Kita. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. Let me just share my screen. Thank you, Arnaud. That was a very, very good intro, I think, to my session, because I'm here to talk about carbon insurance. So I'm the CEO of Kita. Our vision is to be the first carbon insurer for the climate crisis. And today I'm going to talk to you about the role of the insurance industry in fighting climate change, but specifically in terms of funding carbon removal and decreasing that carbon delivery risk. So I suppose first, right, gigatons of carbon removal are needed to fight climate change. We've heard from Antti and Arnaud. I think that is something that we know and we understand. And I passionately believe that insurance is crucial to enable that to happen, and not just happen, right? We're talking about an unprecedented scale up and really an unprecedentedly short period of time. And so why insurance? I'll tell you, I became a huge proponent of the insurance industry back in May 2013. So I joined the international law firm Clyde & Co., probably the world's largest insurance-focused law firm. And I was doing business development and strategy for the insurance team. And they took us to Lloyd's of London to learn about the industry. I suppose this taught me two key things that are relevant to Kita in this conversation. It's one, that you can insure anything, right? All sorts of things are insured, physical things and tangible things. There's even a rumor that somebody once insured immaculate conception. But secondly, I really learned how essential insurance is to the functioning of the global economy, right? The purpose of insurance is to transfer risk, take away risk from the market participants and own it. As an insurance company, that is all they do, they handle risk. And via doing this, via taking away that risk, you can build resilience and enable growth for people, business, and society. And this is 100% essential for us to scale carbon removal at the rate that we need. Right, but no industry is perfect, and insurance isn't perfect. And one key challenge is protection gaps. Right? New markets are inherently new, they're risky, and they tend to lack the historical data that insurance companies use to develop new products. And that limits development, adoption, and scale because, like Arnaud talked about, at some point, if it's challenging to access insurance, it is challenging to access a breadth of financing options to scale. And that is very much what we're seeing in the carbon removal industry today. There is not insurance available to cover the specific risks, and that is holding back the growth of this industry. And so let's just talk for a minute about what this means for the different players within the ecosystem, because it is definitely a challenge for many of them. So project proponents, we're talking about the people who are taking a risk to actually bring a new and innovative form of carbon removal to the market. The types of insurance they need are the types that help them build back when things go wrong, and that cover their operational risk, but also that cover the specific risks that come with selling this new asset of carbon, how they sell, how they generate revenue. You have the buyers and the investors in these projects. Again, like Arnaud mentioned, these buyers are increasingly looking for high quality, they're looking to ensure deliverability. And again, going back to my days at working at a law firm, as the regulatory and disclosure requirements tighten, this increasingly becoming a priority. And both for the buyers that are already investing, they are increasingly, I think, from my conversations, looking to take this out of the realm of an innovative new product and put it into the realm of just how business operates. And then for those who are sitting on the fence, not yet looking at carbon removal, not yet taking that leap from avoidance to carbon removals, they're looking at actually how can we reduce that delivery risk to enable us to get this over the line. And then the variety of intermediaries, where I think insurance adds an additional layer of transparency and risk management that helps them for their own business services, but also to expand into the sort of business opportunities and impact opportunities in the carbon removal marketplace increase. The common risk here across all of these players is that there is no insurance available. And so all of these risks are sitting on the shoulders of these people and these businesses. And that holds back their development, that holds back their scale, it holds back their ability to access that financing. And so that's why we started Kita. Right? We started Kita as part of Carbon 13, which is a venture builder for climate tech companies. And what we really saw was that the lack of insurance for this market was going to cause all of these carbon removal solutions coming out to hit a block, above which point they were going to be unable to access that additional financing that would let them scale at the rate the world needs. So our vision will always be to develop as many insurance products as we can to support as many of the players in this ecosystem as we can. But let me just say first, we are not the only insurance company looking at this market. And that makes us very happy because there is a lot of insurance need here. But what I've put here is actually from a very well-known carbon standard. When we first started looking at insurance, a while ago now, we contacted the standard and they said, actually, the recent growth in carbon markets has caught the attention of the insurance industry to the extent that we've put together a form letter that we're giving out to insurers who contact us. And that form letter had these 4 boxes on it. So like I already said, project-based insurance, right? Where the project proponent is paying for that insurance to restart or continue their project if they experience a reversal event. The core function of insurance, that kind of resilience to build back when things go wrong. Buffer pool insurance. This is one from our market conversations we hear discussed frequently. Is there a way for an insurance company to insure those buffer pools, add an additional layer of risk management, and ideally, potentially reduce the amount of credits that need to go into that buffer pool, increasing the supply in the market? project-based non-permanence insurance, paying for insurance to protect against those carbon losses that come from reversal events. Again, that one is very, very important. And finally, delivery risk insurance, insuring those projected carbon units in case of underperformance. We talk to people in the market every single day, and I would say we could add significant additional numbers of insurance to this list. I would say of particular importance, regulatory insurance. But I have put in the black box delivery insurance because that is where our current focus is. And so let me go into a bit more detail on that. So Kita's first product is for carbon delivery risk. It's carbon purchase protection insurance. And for this first product, we are selling this insurance to the buyers of carbon removal credits. So again, like Arnaud said, and like many of you I'm sure are experiencing, there is a huge supply shortage in the carbon removal market. So increasingly, if you want to access carbon removal credits, you need to forward purchase them. That has an inherent carbon delivery risk in that from the time you put down the agreement to purchase that carbon to the time that the carbon is actually delivered to you, a sort of verified carbon unit, there are multiple things that can go wrong. And that can lead to an under delivery. Let's say you bought 10,000 carbon credits, you only get 7,000, right? And that has an impact on you. And when we speak to people in the market, both the project proponents, as well as the buyers, as well as the brokers, delivery risk has always been the absolute top risk mentioned. And that is why our first product is in this space. And we really do think, again, like Arnaud said, that via adding insurance into the purchase of carbon credits, the forward purchase, we can reduce the cost of capital, increase your rate of return, and really accelerate more funding to help these carbon removal solutions scale. So carbon removal markets and the voluntary carbon markets more generally can be a very complex space, and insurance products can also be quite complex. So what we're trying to do here is create as simple a product as we possibly can. And we're doing that by broadly following the outlines of how this market functions. Obviously at a very high level, but the carbon removal project will follow the outline of development to validation to verification. You will have a carbon buyer who obviously will decide their carbon strategy and decide that forward purchasing carbon removal credits is right for them. At the point of buying those carbon credits is when we would also suggest that you take out insurance. However, we can also pre-risk assess projects in order to provide potentially a lens for those who are assessing different projects to buy. And we also can insure carbon credits that have already been purchased as long as it is prior to that delivery date. So at the point of carbon delivery, by which we mean a verification event, some form of third-party audit, that is when if you have carbon delivery, you receive the number of carbon credits that you purchased, there is no claim. But if you have an under delivery, that is the point at which a claim can be made. In the near term, those claims would be paid in cash with the potential for market price uplift. However, we very much see the potential to shift that to paying claims in carbon. And again, final point here is recognizing that the life of these insurance policies is lengthy, right? The time frame of carbon removal is lengthy. This can be up to a 10-year insurance policy, although we expect on average by around 5 years. Along the way, we will provide a value add service to our clients in which we can do regular monitoring of the underlying projects and provide that report. So Kita is a startup. We span climate tech and insure tech, and like many companies in carbon removal, we were recently formed. And so this first product is going to market in January 23. You can see a quote here, obviously from Arnaud, referencing what he stated in his presentation as well, that we feel very honored to have had the potential opportunity to work with Puro over the last few months in a working group where we have been working very closely to assess the risks of pre-CORCs on the Puro platform and determine how we can actually create that insurance that can be available via the platform to protect that delivery risk. And again, ideally generate more of that upfront financing. And I think you will be able to hear more news on that over the next few months. So just my final point here. We really passionately believe that insurance is a core part of the solution in scaling the carbon removal markets. Like I said, our first product coming to market is for the buyer of a forward purchase carbon removal credit. But Kita's focus will always be developing a portfolio of products because we do see so many risks in the market that are currently uninsured that are really holding back that scale at that unprecedented speed that we need. And we are not going to develop those products that are actually useful in this rapidly growing market unless we hear directly from you in terms of the risks that you feel you face. And we can then come back to you with ways that we think insurance can help. So I suppose I would end this presentation in just saying that we would love to hear from you and very much value the opinions of people in this ecosystem, but also very much thanks to Puro, and we very much look forward to working with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalia. Truly a game changer for the industry. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now we will have Ned Dwyer from American Biocarbon. Ned, welcome.
Thank you. Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm going to speak about our project in Louisiana this morning. So I think I've put the wrong version up. My apologies. Just a moment here. Elba, give us a moment here. I apologize.
I could also share the backup presentation, which I have. So Ned, let me know if you would like us to do that.
Thank you, Elba. I think we're okay.
Okay. Great, we can see your slides.
Great. Thank you very much. And we appreciate the time today to talk about our American Biocarbon project in Louisiana. We are currently operating a smaller scale biochar production facility, and we're in the process, the early stages of construction on the large scale facility. And I'll talk about both of those. We're making biochar out of a biomass product that was historically has been disposed of in some difficult ways. It's either left in the field or in a pile to be allowed to decompose, or it was burned. And when it burns in the fields, in addition to creating, releasing all the gases in the biochar, or in the bagasse, it also creates environmental problems in the region with a lot of particulate waste. So in the US, there's about 33 million tons of sugarcane grown per year, which produces 10 million tons of dry bagasse. Half of that is produced in Louisiana. We are operating in the second largest sugar mill in Louisiana. As far as a market for our biochar, in Louisiana, there's about 1 million acres dedicated to cane production. And the USDA studies around use of biochar and the beneficial use of biochar is based on approximately 1 ton per acre of addition. After that would consume 1 million acres of biochar for those fields. Additionally, there's additional academic studies that show that by adding 4 tons of biochar per acre, you can have substantial reductions in addition of fertilizer, as well as reduction of fertilizer runoff by the mechanism of the biochar keeping the fertilizer near the root ball and making it more effective. Our future capacity increase gives us more opportunity to bring more biochar to the market than we currently are today. And we see with the size of just the bagasse coming from the sugarcane industry for us to grow dramatically in the coming years. Currently, the majority of the bagasse from the harvest is gone to waste. It's either burned or it's decomposed, either in a pile or having been spread back on the field. It's a significant liability, and there aren't any other low-cost disposal options for the bagasse that's being produced. There's a lot of public pressure on air pollution, particularly the particulate pollution that comes from burning the bagasse, and using that process has become a lot less common as time passes. The other issue with bagasse and what causes or sugarcane production, which causes a lot of burning in the fields, is the leafy material. And the leafy material is all biomass, and that biomass has no sugar in it. And so it's not wanted to be harvested and brought into the sugar mill because it becomes a liability once it is, not only from a cost standpoint, but in particular because it decreases the energy and the throughput efficiency of the sugar mill. The important thing is that biochar is a stable form of carbon. It can last thousands of years in the soil, and it's immediate and immediately available, and it's available for use in a variety of industries and brings benefits to a variety of industries. ABC produces not only the biochar in our facility, we also produce biomass pellets from excess waste. And an important part of the product that we produce is that it doesn't have any deforestation. We're not cutting down trees from the forest, which are primarily sourced for biomass pellets. Our biomass pellets are used mainly for absorption of problematic wastewater streams, in particular from landfills, where it's not desirous to put that into a municipal waste treatment facility. It also has a lower life cycle carbon emission than wood pellets. And so while we don't get the benefits that we do get from biochar from those pellets, we do have some significant environmental benefits. From a technology standpoint, and I'll show you an overview of our technology in a little bit, but we have a biomass separation unit, which is a patented unit, and that's used to allow more of the bagasse, particularly in the leaf form, to be recovered from the fields and then remove it prior to it impacting the operation of the sugar mills. This is a benefit to the sugar mill owner as well as the landowner, because it relieves them of this liability and allows them to run their facility at a lower cost and in higher throughput. It also provides additional fiber to our facility, which is helpful for us. Our facility is located on the site of the sugar processing mill, so there's no additional transportation to bring the bagasse from where it's turned from sugarcane into bagasse to come to our facility. Our products meet a growing demand for renewable energy from the sustainable biomass. We're using our pellets are being sold to producers of electricity, as well as the biochar production. With the addition of playing out our business plan, we plan to have 4 additional plants constructed, knowing that biochar is a stable form of carbon that stays in the earth for thousands of years, and that it's used in both agriculture and landscaping, and it's used to facilitate greater performance out of the soils that are used. It's not just a way of sequestering carbon, it's a way of improving agriculture in a carbon responsible manner. It's a way of improving utilization of land, whether it's poor quality land or good quality land. And because it's produced from bagasse, it's an agricultural waste rather than coming from forest. And it gives us that additional benefit of not having to harvest trees in order to produce the product. What we've seen in the carbon market as we've continued to develop this project at American Biocarbon is that the market sentiment has really changed. It's consolidated around long-term carbon removal technologies and projects, and we see the marketplace evolving. And this creates an opportunity for markets for these type of products, and in particular for larger scale biochar production. We think that what we've seen and what we've experienced is that there's a significant corporate interest in reaching 2050 carbon reduction goals, and having this type of permanent sequestration is a great way for companies to meet those goals. And we see that in demand, interest, and in prices in the market. The UN sustainability goals, or the Sustainable Development Goals, if you look at these, what you'll see is that our project impacts a series of those goals. It impacts good health and well-being by improving the environment around the sugar mills and the sugar plantations where the bagasse has historically been burned. It offers decent work and economic growth to those communities. It offers infrastructure development. It offers sustainable development, sustainable consumption and production development, and it makes a significant environmental impact or climate impact. Our Louisiana facility, as I spoke about, has you can see from the photos, there's some significant development there already. We've been operating this facility now for 2 years, both the biomass separation unit and the integrated development unit, which is what we call our commercial scale pilot facility. We've made major upgrades in reliability and product quality to make the biochar, to get the combustion right, to make the biochar permanent. You can make biochar if the chemical constituents of the biochar, particularly carbon to hydrogen ratio, et cetera, aren't right. You don't have permanence of storage. You'll have long-term storage, but eventually that carbon gets released. Provides us with an opportunity. We've been able to validate all the individual unit operations that we use to produce the biochar. What this does from an investment standpoint is it significantly de-risks the investment. That there's always technology risks when you're early in the market. And in this case, we've operated all these individual unit operations sufficiently to have eliminated the technology risk. All we're doing now is we're scaling that plant up. Having said that, our existing plant is the size of many biochar facilities, which today tend to be smaller. I have a quick video that looks around our facility. Our current facility, as you can see, it's DCS controlled. What we're doing is we're bringing in raw bagasse. We dry it, we convey it in, we dry it, we run it through a hammer mill to pulverize it, to screen it, to make sure that we have a very high surface area, which allows us to get full action from the calciner where we produce the biochar. It's like many chemical reactions. The better surface area you have, the better reaction you get. This is looking inside the calciner. The calciner burns, it heats up in an anoxic environment to about 500 degrees C, the bagasse. It causes the bagasse to release its syngas, and then we burn the syngas to circulate back around through the process and use that heat to run the process. In our full-scale plant, we're putting in an ORC, organic Rankine cycle, and system which will generate enough power, a little more than 6 megawatts of power, to run the entire facility. This is the last scene you saw was the bagasse being put, or the biochar being put into bags for shipment. Quick look at the process technology. It's a fairly straightforward process technology where we bring in the material, we dry it, we size it through the process we discussed. The calciner is where the biochar is made. The burner burns the syngas, runs the ORC, and then also sends back waste heat to dry the product coming in, because it's a fairly high moisture product. So American Biocarbon selected Puro.earth when we were looking to find a solution for the generation of corks. We designed this plant and operate the plant in the idea that it creates the foundation for a larger scale plant that incorporates the syngas for combined heat and power. As I said earlier, the facility is co-located at Cora Texas Sugar Mill in White Castle, Louisiana, and uses bagasse as its raw material. The plant, the larger scale plant, is designed, excuse me, the current plant can produce about 2,800 tons per year of biochar, which produces 2 to 2.5 corks per ton of biochar. The facility we're building is a 100,000 ton facility, which will produce 200 to 250,000 corks per year is what we anticipate. Choosing Puro, it really came down to some simple facts, and that was trust and integrity. We looked at the organization. We looked at some other possibilities. We thought that the relationship with NASDAQ was critical to that, and we knew that in an emerging market like the carbon sequestration market, it was important to have the integrity of an organization that had strong standards. And we also, we're sensitive to the issues around concerns about greenwashing. And we wanted to make sure that when folks looked at our process, what they saw was that they could count on what we said we would do, is that we were doing what we're saying we're doing, that it's being checked, and it is transparent. And the Puro standard verification gives us that. And it should give our customers confidence and trust in the environmental attributes of the product that we produce. We anticipate that we're going to be able to bring our volume of corks from over 200,000 after we build this plant to nearly $1 million available annually. We also believe that Puro.earth has a strong carbon credit market, and that participating in that marketplace gives us the best opportunity to get to the market, both to allow us to monetize those corks and be able to support future development of our business. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ned, and thank you so much for those kind words and for sharing your experience with the ecosystem. Thank you. And now we will have Mikael Larsen, CEO of Climate Impact X. Welcome, Mikael.
Thank you, Elba. Thank you for the opportunity. And let me also share a couple of slides here if I can get it to work. I hope you should be able to see it now. There we go. All right. Okay. So what I wanted to do today was to make a brief introduction to who we are, Climate Impact X, but perhaps more importantly, the partnership that we've been starting with Puro. Specifically, I want to talk to you a little bit about the opportunities that we see right here in Asia, where we're headquartered. And although we are a global marketplace and exchange, global platform, we do believe that if you're a supplier, you will see that an increasing amount of demand will come from Asia. And there's an enormous amount of investment also looking for removal solutions from Asia. And similarly, if you are a buyer of removal carbon credits, you will see that there will actually be a number of new removal projects coming right here from Asia. So that's the story I'm going to walk you through. So first of all, why did we get started? Well, we got started out of a private-public partnership here in Singapore, based on the very simple thing that we realized that despite the fact that a very large amount of the future supply, whether they be removal or in avoidance credits, it's going to come straight here from Asia. Yet we have very little of the infrastructure here in Asia. We don't have the registries, we don't have the financing, we don't have the marketplaces, we don't have the standards. We have very little in this space, and you got to start somewhere. And so we became the first building block and it's in by Singapore to become a global carbon service hub. And the idea was always to begin by eliminating some of the key problems that have kind of dominated in the carbon credit so far, which is the lack of trust. We got started about 2 years ago, and our shareholders today are DBS, which is one of the largest banks in Southeast Asia, SGX, which is the local exchange here in Singapore, Standard Chartered Bank, which I'm sure you know, and Temasek, which is the sovereign wealth fund here in Singapore. So we came across each other, Puro and CIX, a while ago, and one of the key things that we had in common was a belief in there are synergies between us. And although we strongly believe that we need to grow the removal market here in Asia and globally for all the reasons that was pointed out earlier, we also believe that we need a blend in terms of preserving the existing carbon sinks and growing new ones as we're doing right now. And so beyond that, we realized there's complementarity in terms of where we're located. A lot of our clients are from Asia, but they're also global. We realized that we have slightly different focus in our expertise in terms of the type of credits we bring to market. But most importantly, we had a uniform view or close to uniform view on the importance of not bringing into anything to market which doesn't have the integrity, which doesn't have the quality seal. And on that basis, we felt some type of partnership that I'll go through in more details could be formed. So what do we bring to the game here? Well, what we bring is a focus on bringing our entire strategies around bringing the next wave of carbon credits to market. And we do so in terms of a number of different platforms, a marketplace and an auction, which is primarily for the primary market. And an exchange is where we try to create scale in terms of standardized contract and giving liquidity into the market. Clearly for removal projects, a lot of the actions today is in the primary market, but we will see a time where we will have standardized contracts around these things and where liquidity would be helped through exchanges. But underlying all of our platform was a focus on 4 areas of trust, and we stood by that through thick and thin, and we will means that there's a lot of things we would not do. So for example, trust in the CIX products, which means that roughly I suspect that we would be 50% of the credits which are in the market right now that we wouldn't be selling on our platform. We spend a lot of time making sure that the things we bring onto our platform are of a sufficient quality. And that's one reason why we decided to partner with Puro. Secondly, the trust in the executions. We've seen a lot of problems in the past with fraudulent transaction when people don't get their money going out to the right places. We're going to change that, and that's why we've chosen to partner with NASDAQ, which is also, of course, a backer of Puro in terms of the execution layer of a lot of these things. Thirdly, and critically important, is the trust in the use of the product. We heard previous speakers talk about the risk of greenwashing. We, in a few of our communities, try and educate as best we can in terms of what does responsible use of carbon credit look like. And then finally, trust in the oversight. Many people tend to forget that even once something has been put into the market as carbon credit, if there is a reversal risk, then we really don't have much of a climate change benefit. And that is particularly important in nature-based solutions, but it's clearly also important in some part of the removal solutions which are engineered. What we've done is to educate the markets. We build a community, and it's one that we invite you to join as well if you want to, because we realize that most companies transact today out of fear, and that doesn't matter whether they buy nature-based solutions or engineered solutions. There's a lot of concern about being blamed for greenwashing. And the only way to change that is if you build a community of industry leaders that can speak to each other about what does good use of credits looks like. And so we spend quite a bit of time and money in trying to invest in a good community. I talk about our quality assurance. And on this slide, I have outlined some of the things that we're doing to make sure. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a number of things that we care about. Some of them are more relevant in nature-based solutions. But the core carbon attributes, of course, are critical in everything. But even in some of the engineered solution, the social integrity element is important, and so is project governance. And we develop our own quality assessment for each type of products that we would sell on our platform. On top of that, we build, of course, on the established international standards that is there. We, like Puro, have an international advisory council. In our case, 18 people, which is the majority of them are academics and NGOs. But there are also buyers and sellers from our community, and we're pleased to have Puro as an observer. And then we do use, to the extent possible, third-party ratings to calibrate our own quality assessment. All of this is to say that we don't believe the market deserves anything less than good quality if we are to reestablish trust in it. A little bit about our platform. So if you were to be a project developer and you're listing on Puro today, we hope to be able to promote you to our audience as well, so that we can get as many eyes on some of these amazing projects that are being developed with CORC standards today. So a marketplace is a natural thing to do. In our case here, you'll be able to read up on the different projects, compare them in terms of prices and so on. But perhaps the more important thing, because we're talking about nascent types of credits, is our auction mechanism. One of the things we found is that while some established projects have a reasonably well-defined price and buyers know what to pay for them, it's certainly not true for most of the next wave credits that are coming to market. And hence why an auction design can and has been useful in some of these cases so far. It enabled price discovery in a transparent way where the buyers make sure that they don't overpay and the suppliers can set a minimum price, and we can also help with the other conditions, for example, if there are buyer restrictions and so on. Now, I talked about the potential that Asia holds, and I really believe that it's hard to underestimate how big Asia will become. It's nascent now, but if you just look at the supply side right now, we see such a potential for some of these solutions that we talk about, biochar, carbon sequestrations in all forms to come to market. And it will be a large part of the world's carbon stock as we move forward. But it's also encouraging to see that we now have more than 670 companies in Asia which are committing to tackle climate change. If we look at how many have signed up to science-based targets, it is still the smaller proportion compared to the number of companies who are out here, but it's growing. And so when people think that Asia is underdeveloped, I would say that that has historically been true, but it's certainly changing the landscape. And what we would hope to do is together with Puro bring some of that customer segment to these cork or pre-cork products and allow them to buy them as well. On the supply side, some of you may have seen this before. On the right-hand side, you'll see the nature-based solution, which is not the topic today, but not surprising, it's about a third around the equator belt from the 3 different subsections, South America, Africa, and Asia. But if you just look at some of the, on the slide here, I call it tech-based removals, but engineered removals that we're talking about today, countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, they're all coming forward with new, interesting solutions in the engineered space. And we're hoping to get some of them to market, get them to adopt corks or pre-corks, get funded, get into something which is credible, and then sold to a global audience. The demand, as I mentioned here, if you look at the 670 companies, you'll see that a lot of them, not unsurprising, is in Japan, but also China and India's large economies are coming up. But I believe that if you look 2 or 3 years ahead, this would look very, very different, and you will see many more companies having taken this journey. And we're willing to invest in that so they make sure that when they're ready to transact, that they will be buying things that is of high quality and high integrity. And finally, something that I think Antti was hinting at earlier on is the ability to create a science-aligned financial instrument that has a blended product in there. So some of you may be familiar with the Oxford Principle, which requires that by 2050, or I think it's called long term, we are only looking at renewable credits which have long durability. So that is the dark part of the type of diagram here. But in the meantime, what we need to do is we need to make sure, that we preserve the current and existing sinks and don't lose the sight that we need incentive for these things to stay on board because of the urgency of this. So what we've been looking to create is a product which is science aligned and which will increasingly have removal credits in there, recognizing also the the short supply that exists so far, but which gradually moves from avoidance projects and into removal projects. What it does is essentially 2 things. It ensures that we don't drop avoidance immediately, but it also recognizes that although right now we have a supply shortage, as more supply comes on, we need buyers who cannot afford the price point that some of these removal credits have to get interested in these things. And we have too many conversations where people say, why should I pay $200 for or 200 euros for a removal product when I can get 1 for 10? Some people can get convinced about the logic, some people cannot. So we're thinking of doing a blended product where increasing over time, you will have a large proportion of removal credits. We believe that that allows buyers to transact with confidence and get people started on the journey towards removals. Finally, as I said, we're trying to create an Asian ecosystem out here. And as has already been alluded to before, it requires many parts of the value chain to come together. In our case here, we sit firmly in Climate Impact X in this 4th part. Puro occupies 2 of them, but both of us have partners in the financing space. And of course, many of you on this call are project developer or proponents. But we believe that for Asia, we can create this value chain here so that buyers can be resting assured that they can get the entire solution and equally to suppliers. So finally, my call to action is we want to promote corks. We want to promote pre-corks, but we also need Puro's help to help us educate the growing demand for these types of things here in Asia. So Puro and us are standing up this community, or we're standing up the community with Puro's help, and we want you, as many of you, to be part of that community to help educate others, but perhaps also learn a bit of a thing or two together as we develop the market together. So with that, I'll just hand it back over again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mikkel. Again, another partner with whom we are working. Thank you for your presentation. And now we'll go over to the Q&A. And Joseph Kochansky, our Director of Business Development. He will be moderating and presenting the questions. Joe, are you there?
Yep, thank you, Elba. So we've had some good questions come in. Thank you all for your presentations today. The first one I just wanted to bring up was with Mikel. So maybe you could speak to what the timelines look like for when buyers can come to CIX to buy corks from your website and some of the blended products that you're speaking about.
Right. Thank you for a good question. So our marketplace and our auction is already up and running. We're integrating with Puro in the hope that we can get that fixed this year. So this is a relatively short thing. Of course, if there are people that want to buy from our platform for product in the meantime, I'm sure between me and Antti will find a solution for them to do that. But a more integrated solution is coming in the very near future. And in terms of the blended product, if you want to hear a little bit about that, so we are not quite ready to announce the timing of that, but it's something which also I'm hoping to be able to make an announcement about in the upcoming 1 to 2 months. I think it's a product that the world needs, and I think it will actually scale the removal products quite quickly. So give us another month or two, you'll hear from us.
Sounds great, thank you. I had another one here for kind of Ned, I think, and perhaps Mariana. And it was just a question around how much CO2 is sequestered in 1 ton of biochar, and how much can be applied to soil and things like that.
So it's between 2 and 2.5 corks per ton of biochar. And as you know, it's calculation based on the material that's produced and to what degree it's been through pyrolysis. How much can be applied? The minimum effective amount, according to some pretty extensive USDA studies for sugarcane, is 1 ton per acre. There is also a lot of work done, as I said in my presentation, about impact on fertilizer, which we think is a very important commercial issue for farmers, and that allows them to utilize less fertilizer, which is not the most environmentally friendly product, even when it's used as intended, but it's even worse when it creates runoff into surface streams. And so we know that at 4 tons per acre, it still has an extremely beneficial impact on the plant growth. What we've seen from the USDA studies and some limited studies that we've done ourselves, and because these are long-term impacts, USDA has documented that they can increase the life of the crop, the sugarcane crop, from 4 to 6 years in the Louisiana growing area, which means they get better utilization from the land, and that they've seen around 20% increase in yield per acre at the 1 ton per acre rate. So it's important that, in addition to the impacts that we have with the corks and with the carbon removal, there's also a really significant impact on agriculture, land utilization, and the carbon footprint of the farmer when he's farming his product.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ned. Natalia, there were several questions that came in regarding the insurance product, so I don't know if I can sum them all up here, but it sounds like it would be a big challenge to create this product. Maybe you could speak to some of your challenges that you've faced, and how can you produce the product without having sort of an accurate measurement of what's to come, and permanence issues with 1, 10, 100,000 years. If you could comment on some of the things you've learned as you've developed this.
Yeah, of course. So I guess the first part of that question, the key challenges. So I suppose at a high level, right? Like insurance isn't rocket science. It is taking a pool of data, trying to analyze that data in order to assess the risk and then price the risk. And then backing that up with some form of regulated capital. So if you price it wrong and you get it wrong, that you have money to pay the claim. And I know that is the most basic thing in the world, but I guess the A is that it's not rocket science. But one of the key sort of KPIs for Kita is based on the type of insurance company we are, which is called a managing general agent, which is what most startups are in the market. And it means that you partner with a larger insurance company who holds your regulated capital and pays your claim. That is good for any of our clients. It provides counterparty risk protection. You know, if Kita went out of business, your claim would still be paid. But I guess that is a long way of saying that we work very closely with the larger insurance industry. And so one of the opportunities and the challenges for Kita is helping to educate that broader insurance market on carbon removal, on how the voluntary carbon market and the broader carbon market functions, the data that is available and how we think we can assess the risk and price that risk. And so working with them in order to get them comfortable with the insurance products that can come to market. And so I suppose one of the challenges that is inherent with that is that some products and some markets and some buyers are deemed more risky than others. And that is part of the reason why we went with our first product, which is for the buyers of carbon removal, generally large corporates, generally speaking, in markets that are more easy to insure, such as the UK and the US. That's a high level of the challenges. I suppose in terms of the data, was it the how do we access the data, or how are we pulling trends from the data?
So yeah, there were a couple of things here. Basically, how are you, with some of these carbon credits, I guess we are issuing to 100 years. That's kind of the guaranteed term, but that's a pretty extensive period of time. So if there was in some way some kind of reversal, that's several years out from now, what kind of compensation would be expected, and how can you make this also just an extension to how can you make this affordable, so a valuable proposition.
Okay, and I will say, if there's anyone with specific questions, do follow up with me afterwards. I suppose the first clarity point is I said Kita wants to develop a portfolio of insurance products, but we're starting with one product, and that product is for delivery risk. And so the permanence point, we are not insuring permanence. Permanence is probably one of the most challenging things that we could insure, particularly, there is no insurance company in the world that's going to insure permanence for 100 years, let alone 1,000 years. You might be able to develop warranty insurance, say up to 25 years, like you see in solar panels, but that's probably the breadth of it, where you can go on permanence. We do have ideas on the permanence point, but it's not the first product. The first product is delivery risk. So you have forward purchased a pre-CORC, let's say, but some form of carbon removal credit. You've forward purchased that promise of carbon that will be delivered to you in a verified way in the future. And once you receive that verified credit, you can retire it, you can do with it as you will. But it's at that point of delivery that this first insurance product ends. So that is, we are not insuring permanence with this first product, we are insuring delivery. And that, I suppose, creates a barrier, right? It's not the fix-all for the entirety of the market. We're trying to solve a very specific risk with this first product.
Sounds good. Thank you for that.
If I may just quickly add there, this is Antti. The methodologies that Puro has created thus far are inherently really low on their risk of reversal. And we do always do a pre-issuance deduction of the CORCs based on the expected degradation of the CO2 or other ways of, if the CO2 were to escape throughout the sort of the contracted permanence period. So that is already counted in. We don't talk about it as a buffer. We talk about it as a pre-issuance deduction of certificates. They are never issued in the first place, so they cannot be misused.
Thank you, Antti. I did have a question for Mariana, just in terms of we had one question here pertaining to how is it that direct air capture and bioenergy carbon capture and storage fit under one methodology?
Please repeat. Sorry, I was looking for my buttons.
No worries. So under the geologically stored carbon, there are a couple of different technologies such as DAC and BECCS that apply to that single methodology. Could you kind of explain that to the audience a little bit more for their understanding?
Okay, so DACs and BECCS, and how are they sister or same type of methodologies? So all methodologies in our Puro standard are storage focused. So actually the name and the endpoint is the storage media where the carbon is in an inert form, and both in direct air capture and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, the endpoint is a similar storage geologically formed under a cap rock or this kind of cavity on land or in ocean. Then the pathway to get there, the capture is slightly different. In direct air capture, it's an engineering machine that does the capturing, whereas in BECCS, the first phase is done by plants, so by photosynthesis, and the second phase is when that biomass, the plants are burned, and then from that burning, the carbon is captured. But in the end, the CO2 ends up in the same geological storage. Similar, not necessarily the physically same location.
Sounds good, thank you. And Arnaud, I was curious, in your opinion, what are you most excited about with the new Pre-CORCs framework, and how much interest has there been as you roll this new initiative out?
Yeah, thank you for the great question. So obviously, before we came up with this, we've been testing with the most relevant buyers in our ecosystem. I think it's quite clearly understood that from the supply side, the demand is, as much as 100%. Who would not want to get prepaid for the production of their negative emission? On the demand side, yes, we've tested with the key buyers. The idea with Pre-CORCs is that you can reach to higher numbers of buyers. So clearly, key buyers in our ecosystem, a lot of them really care about enabling impact for projects in development phase. And usually those buyers are quite well equipped with dedicated teams. Now with this Pre-CORCs as a kind of a way to streamline and rely a little bit on the assessment from Puro, you can extend the pool of buyers to different natures and help them join the leadership of the key buyers of carbon removal to grow the pool of buyers. And therefore, we see the appearance of a lot of interest of new types of buyers of, for example, climate impact investment natures, financial sectors, banks, people who own a lot of companies who want to feed, future corks for their portfolio companies. So the potential is really high. They're a good sign on the demand. Of course, we're here just to produce the tool. We hope that they will be useful tools, and we'll keep learning. We just need to not wait before trying. So thanks for the great question.
Thank you, Arnaud. Antti, to follow up on your comment about the extremely low risk of reversal for carbon removal credits on the Puro program, what other safeguards have you installed, you and Mariana, from the beginning to make sure that this is the strongest, most durable, robust credit available in the market?
Well, we've tried to select processes that are the least disputable ways of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And the contributing factors to that are that the processes allow quantification to take place via measuring instead of modeling. So laboratory tests and weighing are good ways of quantifying carbon, of course, combined with the emissions associated with the production. They need to be taken into account in order to reach the net balance of the carbon removal. Then we also decided to prefer processes that leave a data trail, something that the auditors can come and see afterwards. You know, a significant, let's say, or yeah, data trail helps the work of the auditors. Then there needs to be, you know, we need to be able to guarantee a certain level of permanence. Initially, we started with 50 years, but it's likely that we will now move to 100 years of permanence in our whole standard altogether. And of course, there needs to be also a dependency on carbon finance and let's say a realistically measurable baseline to get started with.
Fantastic. Well, we only have just a few minutes left here, so I thought I might ask. I know that the IT team has been busy at work, and there's been a lot of progress and changes happening. Could you give the audience a little sneak peek of what's coming up here in the forthcoming months, and whether the user experience will change in any way? Any details about what we have coming next?
And who was this question to?
That's for you, Antti.
Okay. All right. Well, I think the first visible changes are not for the, let's say, the wide audience, but we are trying to serve the suppliers in the best possible manner. And so we are helping them to sort of automate the interaction with Puro. So that's the first thing. That will also involve some of the processes related to actually signing the platform agreement with Puro, on both sides, the buyer and the supplier's side. That will be managed non-manually, so in a portal. That helps a lot, of course. And then, yeah, we are going to further develop our marketplace. That's of course the major thing that we are gearing up for in the next say half a year or so, when we are launching the sort of the next generation marketplace.
That's great. And I know we are all very excited about the ICVCM development as that program comes online. So with that, I'll leave it to Elba if you'd like to say some closing words.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank everyone who has joined us, especially the audience and the panelists today. And like I said, keep in contact with us. If you do have any other questions, we will be sharing contact information and the recording to all of those who've registered. And you can also send us your questions via those messages. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
for arranging.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Elba, for the hard work putting it all together.
Thank you.